Good morning and welcome to Fox 29 News Now on this Wednesday morning. Police are investigating multiple hit and runs. Some turned deadly. They started this weekend, but the most recent incident happened in Bucks County last night. Sabina Kiriakos joins us live from the police station in Warrington Township with more.
Warrington Township Police have announced the arrest of 31-year-old Arturo Guzman Jimenez in the deadly hit and run of a 79-year-old woman yesterday along Easton Road. The victim died at the scene. Police were able to trace Guzman Jimenez's vehicle using parts of the car left behind at the scene. They were able to determine his VIN number and traced the car to his home in Plumstead Township. Police say the 79-year-old woman was outside of her home when Guzman Jimenez struck her with his vehicle. They say that he showed signs of intoxication and told detectives who found him at his home that he was afraid of being deported. Other witnesses did stop to render aid to the victim at the scene, but she died.
That was unsolicited. He brought that out to the police. I really don't even know his immigration status at this point, but I can tell you if that was one of his fears. I would also think if you're drinking and driving, that's another fear, and not having a driver's license would be a third one, a reason. And you think about why people leave the scene. Sometimes they don't have insurance on their cars, but we're talking about a human being here in life, and it's just it makes it much worse when you leave and you get caught, because there's a lot more serious charges right now.
And as you see in those photos, the damage to Guzman Jimenez's car was so extensive that detectives say they were actually surprised he was able to drive it all the way home. This is the first arrest in a spate of deadly hit and runs to hit our area since last Friday. Warrington Township Police say Guzman Jimenez was arraigned at midnight last night, and he is being held at Bucks County Jail on 10% of $700,000 bail. In Warrington Township, Sabina Kiriakos, Fox 29 News.
Thank you, Sabina. Police are searching for drivers they say are responsible for 3 other deadly hit and runs that took place over the weekend in Philadelphia. Well, it's become common to see people riding blue rental bikes all over the city. Now they're upping their game, making 10 electrical bikes available. Lauren Johnson covered the story this morning. She is live right now.
Okay, so if you love the Indigo bike system, you're going to love this even more, because there's a sort of upgrade coming to Philadelphia. Wafia Murray joining us this morning to talk more about it. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So this is a little special edition bike that we have going here. It's an electric bike. Talk to me more about it and why it's so special.
Yeah, so this is an electric bike, and what it means is that it's a pedal assist. So as you're biking, when you're going up hills or taking a longer distance, it'll give you a little assistance, a little boost to make your trip more enjoyable, not as physically draining on people, so that people have longer, more enjoyable trips.
Let's demo it. Show me this little device here. It's
Yes.
3 different settings for 3 different, trips that people might be taking around the city.
Yeah, so right here, this is where you're able to see how much battery life is left on your bike.
That's always very helpful.
Yes, and then there are 3 different settings. So turbo is the highest, sport is in the middle, and tour is the lowest one. So you're able to adjust the amount of speed or the amount of assist that you want as you're riding.
Let's get Kristen from Indigo, General Manager duties, be our bike model this morning for you. Wafia, tell me this. There's only 10 of them in the city so far. What's the goal?
Yes, so for the purposes of the pilot we have 10 e-bikes out for 2 months to get a sense for, where people are riding, what we need to do to make sure that these bikes are flowing well in the system, figure out what the pricing options should look like, so that hopefully in 2019 we'll be able to add about 100 of these e-bikes to the system.
Kristen looks like she can get up to a good rate of speed. How fast do these bikes go?
Yes, so these can go up to 17 miles an hour depending on how much you're pedaling or how much assistance you'll need at the time.
Gotcha. So maybe 100 coming in 2019. Are the price points going to be different for these bikes versus the other ones?
Yes, so that's kind of what we're hoping to figure out during the pilot, get a sense of, how much people are willing to pay. It's very important for us in the city of Philadelphia with Indigo to have a system that has affordable pricing options for all income levels. So looking to see kind of what those income variations will be to make sure that it's affordable and accessible for all.
Wafia, my memory fails me, but I was there for the launch of Indigo bikes. How long has it been in Philadelphia now?
It has been 3 years.
3 long years.
Yeah.
I was there for the launch. How's it been? The city responding well?
Oh my gosh, it's been amazing. The city has really been taken to the bikes. It's really, a great form of public transportation, and people have been riding and loving it, and that's why it's important for us as the city to provide new innovations such as the e-bikes to provide people a more experience and to hopefully get more users to the Indigo family.
Okay, last question, Wafia, for you. People who ride this often, they know the ropes, they know the ins and outs, they know where the stations are. You have the app on your phone. What lets you know that there's an electric bike somewhere?
Yes, so when you open the app or the website, you'll see a green lightning bolt, and that'll show you that there's an e-bike available at the station for checkout.
Pay attention to the battery life so you don't stop in the middle of the city,
Yes.
get stranded.
But even if the battery does stop, you can still use it as a regular bike. So even if the electric assist goes out, you can still bike it as a regular bike and finish a trip. It works
won't
both
fail
ways.
you.
No, it won't fail you.
I love it. Wafia Murray, thank you so much. Kristen, you were a beautiful model. New bikes in Philadelphia, 10 limited time, but this could be bigger and better in 2019. Back to you guys in the studio.
Well, thank you, Lauren. Over to national news. In its 7th day, the Woolsey fire continued to burn as crews battled a new flare-up in Point Mugu State Park in Ventura County. The fire has scorched 97,620 acres, and containment was up to 47% by Wednesday morning, California Fire said. The blaze in Ventura and Los Angeles counties have blackened an area about the size of Denver, fire officials said. Since last Thursday, it has engulfed mobile homes, scenic canyon gateways, and celebrity estates. Firefighters could make more progress if relentless Santa Ana winds start to diminish, as predicted Wednesday and Thursday. Authorities allowed residents back into several communities on Tuesday, including a section of Malibu. Other areas have been repopulated since the weekend. Tens of thousands of people remained under evacuation orders, down from a high of as many as 250,000. Officials warned residents to stay vigilant, cautioning about hot spots and pockets of vegetation that could ignite. We are not out of the woods yet. We still have some incredibly tough conditions ahead of us, Ventura County Fire Chief Mark Lorenzen said Tuesday. The death toll from the Woolsey fire stood at 2, a pair of adults found last week in a car overtaken by flames. They have not been identified. The Southern Californian blaze was part of an outbreak of wildfires on both ends of the state. At least 48 people were confirmed dead in the wildfire burning in the Northern California section, making it the deadliest blaze in state history. Well, this is a live look over the Benjamin Franklin Parkway here in Philadelphia. It stands around 41 degrees. The first flakes of the season are heading this way. The Fox 29 Weather Authority is tracking a system moving in Thursday where we may see sleet and snow in some areas. Some parts could see anywhere between 1 to 3 inches. Thursday's system comes with an area of high pressure off to the north, which may funnel down some cold air that could get trapped at the surface. Fox 29's Kathy Orr and Scott Williams say it all depends on temperature, location, elevation, and timing. Areas north and west of Philadelphia have the best chances of seeing a possible wintry mix. Winds will gust 25 to 40 miles per hour. By the evening rush, the snow and sleet will change over to rain for most of us. Download the Fox 29 Weather Authority app to keep up with the latest forecasts. After days of delays, the recount in Broward County, Florida, officially began Tuesday morning. In the 40 hours that preceded it, not a single vote had been counted because officials were busy sorting ballots and calibrating and testing machines. Down the road in Miami-Dade County, which is also dealing with a recount, workers were more than halfway finished and on track to meet Thursday's 3 p.m. deadline. This year, Florida's all-too-familiar election recount is not only about deciding winners and losers, but highlights the dramatic difference in efficiency and trust in Broward, a largely Democratic county that has a history of election missteps. It would have been both surprising and shocking if they had actually started it on time and completed it on time, Kathy Lerman, principal of the Lerman Law Firm in Florida, told Fox News. The state has been back in the middle of a familiar nightmare after a recount was ordered in 3 races. Florida law mandates that any election decided by 0.5% or less will trigger a recount. 3 in the Sunshine State fit the bill, with 2, the race for U.S. Senator and Governor, being in the national spotlight. The undecided races include the state Senate race, which pits incumbent Senator Bill Nelson, a Democrat, against Governor Rick Scott, a Republican, and the gubernatorial race between Democrat Andrew Gillum and Republican Ron DeSantis. Much of the blame for the slowness has fallen on Supervisor of Elections Brenda Snipes, whose oversight of the election has come under attack by both Republican and Democrats, not to mention the protesters camped outside the Lauderhill recount site for the 5th day in a row. Protesters carried signs that read, "Corrupt Snipes, lock her up," "Busted Brenda," and "I trust Michael Avenatti more than Brenda," while shouting at election officials, counter-protesters, and the news media. This is a live look at that Lauderhill location in Florida, where the recount is taking place right now. Again, the deadline is set to be tomorrow, Thursday at 3 p.m. Now over to East Front Plaza in Washington, D.C., where they are taking the 116th Congress member-elect class photo. It is a gorgeous scene over at the Capitol East Front Plaza in Washington, D.C. I just want to switch over to the National Safety Control Board, where they're holding a hearing for the engine failure that happened earlier in the year, April 17th. The Southwest Airlines engine that failed at 32,000 feet over the Burnville area of Berks County. About 20 minutes into its flight from New York to Dallas, debris from the engine fell, and one of the engines broke, and it ended up killing a woman. Federal safety officials are questioning representative from the engine maker, and that is all going on right now at the National Transportation Safety Board hearing in Washington, D.C.
Inspections on our fan blades, as well as eddy current inspections of the blades when they were in the shop. So at the time of the event, we had already inspected 603 engines. The first airworthiness directive that came out on April 20th, 2018, that'd be AD 2018-0951, was effective to 286 of our engines. All but 85 had already been inspected per those prior efforts. The remaining engines were inspected over the next 5 days, and we were completed with those inspections and compliant with that airworthiness directive by April 25th, well within the 20 days that was required by the airworthiness directive. We then went on and continued to inspect our fleet until through May 17th, 2018. At that point, we had inspected every engine in our fleet. So the following ADs, 2018-09-10 and 2018-10-11, we were compliant with either when they came out or prior to them coming out. And then finally, in July, CFM had indicated to us that they were going to recommend reduced inspection interval from 3,000 cycles to 1,600 cycles. So at that time, we began accelerating our inspections such that on August 2nd, 2018, we could say that no operating fan blade in our fleet had gone longer than 1,600 cycles since its previous inspection. And so the airworthiness that recently came out in October 2018, 1801, we were already compliant with that by the time it was released.
Thank you very much. And did you have any difficulties performing the inspections, such as in the tooling or training or instructions or the pace of inspections? Because it seems like you completed them fairly rapidly.
So the inspection, we schedule it with the fan blade lube. So the blades, when they're already out, you clean the blades essentially and take the ultrasonic probe to inspect the blade dovetail, as was shown earlier in the hearing. So all told, getting the blades out, performing the inspection, putting them back in and running the engine is about a 5 or 6 hour job that can be done on a maintenance overnight. At the time of the Philadelphia event, we had done this inspection 600 times, so we had a fair amount of experience with it. Certainly doing the number of inspections that we did in the time frame, within a month we did 900 inspections. So within that time frame, it certainly presented some logistical challenges in terms of routing aircraft to maintenance facilities and things like that, but we were able to manage through it and get it done.
Thank you. I'm going to try to keep within my own instructions as well and ask one last question in this round of FAA, Mr. Spinney. So it's my understanding that CFM had issued some service bulletins prior to the Philadelphia event that we're talking about today. Did the FAA issue any ADs based on these service bulletins prior to April? And could you explain briefly?
So we had not issued what's considered the final rule airworthiness directive. We had begun the airworthiness directive process and had issued a notice of proposed rulemaking. We had received public comments to that rule, and we're in the process of responding to those comments and developing the final rule at the time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate that clarification on the timeline. My time is up, and so I will turn over to Mr. Badinsky for his questions.
Good morning. My main question at this round will be for Mr. Hebedank. It's a multi-part question, but I'll just ask one part at a time. The fan blade roots are shot peened to impart residual compressive stresses at the blade roots, and that's exactly where the accident fracture occurred in this event. Residual compressive stresses from shot peening are generally to aid the initiation or to control the initiation of fatigue cracks in the blade root. In other words, they prevent or prolong the initiation of fatigue cracks in the blade root. And during the laboratory work that was done at NTSB and elsewhere, the materials lab report documented a loss of residual compressive stresses in some of the fan blade roots tested from the accident engine. I want to say I think it was six fan blades that were evaluated. And so assuming that those residual compressive stresses were within design tolerances when the blades were new, it's perceived that there was a loss in residual stress, residual compressive stress. The report also documented some small cracks in some of the blades, which can be an indication of loss of residual compressive stress as well. So my first question is, how is residual stress factored into the modeling of fatigue crack initiation life of fan blade?
We account for the residual stress in a standard manner of doing that. We do not take credit for that residual stress from shot peening. So for instance, in the coating process can create perturbations or things on the surface, but by shot peening that, as you described, you put a compressive layer and it makes it much less sensitive to any of those things. So in our processing, the way we account for it is that with the combined processing, it's net back to standard material properties.
Okay, so what you're saying is that this just helps to provide a more conservative fatigue analysis.
Yes.
Is the mechanism of a residual compressive stress loss understood at this time? And is the residual compressive stress loss interrelated with tribological characteristics of the dry film lubricant? Do you have any kind of understanding in that area?
Yes. The presence of the coating or not, from a material perspective, is irrelevant, but the loss of coating, as I described earlier, can lead to higher friction levels, which can raise the peak stress in the area of interest that we're discussing. So we have not confirmed one way or another, but as you said, we have seen blades that have a loss in residual stress. There's really two possibilities for that. One is that the stress level is so high with the high friction that you, in that stress condition, you'll actually relax out the compressive stresses put in the material by the shot peen process. The other thought process is during the overhaul process where the coating is reapplied, there may be something in that processing that affected the residual stress. We have worked that very hard for 2 years now, and we have not been able to lock that down with the data that we have. So it's one or the other. So we have implemented process checks, audits at the supplier to make sure that we have a robust coating process that won't lead us down a material degradation issue.
Okay, but there's no, so you don't really audit compressive residual stress on a basis. It's like once you have a process set up, you do your parts, and it's not monitored over time. So blades aren't ever checked further in their life.
And that would be standard process for any part. Right. The way we use that practically in the industry is we set up a shot peen process, and that's all of the parameters. It's what material is a shot peen, what size is a shot peen, what pressure do you apply it, how far away are you, all of those parameters. And then we run a sample piece that's called an almond strip, and it tells us for those given processes, you will get this much residual stress we apply that same process to the blades, and the expectation is that's what you get in the blade from a compressive layer.
Okay, thank you. One last part to this question. Regarding risk analysis to determine inspection and overhaul intervals, how would the loss of residual stress influence the determination of overhaul intervals?
The loss of residual stress is really built into all of the field data that we're getting as far as the data from the inspections, where we have found the cracks, how old they've been, what is the crack propagation rate. All of those parameters go into that, determining what the right relube is from a risk perspective. But I wouldn't say the actual, that physical number is included in it. It's in turn really included in all of the other data, that effect.
Okay, thank you. That is my question.
Thank you, Mr. Budinsky. Mr. DeLisi.
Thank you. Mr. Habedank, had the Pensacola blade already been inspected prior to its failure?
I believe from the records that the last inspection was in the shop during overhaul in 2012.
And what type of inspection was that?
That would have been our standard shop inspection. It's called fluorescent penetrant inspection.
FPI.
FPI.
So when the blade failed, did the striation count indicate that the crack already existed at the time of its previous inspection?
Yes, the data suggests from the metallography and the striation count from the crack that the crack was approximately 60 thousandths deep at the time of the inspection.
Had the Philadelphia blade been inspected prior to its failure?
I'm sorry, sir. I think I need to correct the previous statement. I caught what I heard was you were asking me about Philadelphia, but your first question was on Pensacola.
I did want to walk through for both.
Yeah,
so.
Okay. So if you could please give me a second and let's go back. And
I
want to make sure, get the record straight on which one. I apologize. I jumped into the
Great. So let's go back. We're talking about two blades that failed in service, the first one being Pensacola. Had that blade been inspected prior to its failure?
Yes, that's a data I'm trying to pull up here. Just give me 1 second. Please.
Okay.
As for the Pensacola blade, looks like our last inspection of that, last time it was in the shop, was at about 20,000 cycles when the shims were put in, and the failure on that one was at 38,000. So the crack in that one did not initiate prior to that inspection. It initiated after the inspection based on striation count.
Okay, so now on to the Philadelphia blade.
Yeah.
Had it been inspected prior to its failure?
Yeah, so it was inspected in 2012, as I indicated. It, at the time, had about 20,000 cycles of operation on it, on those blades, and the failure occurred with approximately 32,000 cycles.
So did the striation count indicate that that crack had already existed at the 20,000 cycle time?
Yes. So that if we look at the striation count and go backwards, it appears that during that inspection in 2012, the size of the defect was about 1/16 of an inch or 60 mils.
And is that the level of threshold that you would expect detection using an FPI technique to catch?
That's lower than what an FPI is capable of doing on a repeated basis.
So is there a better inspection technique out there to determine if a blade root is cracking?
Yes, it's the inspection we have implemented now, either the ultrasonic inspection done on wing or the eddy current, which is even more refined in the shop.
And how often is that inspection required?
In the shop? Which specific? So
I'm asking about an inspection technique that's more effective than an FPI.
Right. So there's two inspections. The ultrasonic requirement is that the operator's inspected every 1,600 cycles, and it has to be go through the sonic inspection. An alternative to that is if the blade happens to be in the shop, they can inspect it, and any current there, both inspections count as credit towards the service bulletin. But I will clarify too, sir, that all blades that go through the shop for overhaul do get eddy current inspected.
Okay, so using the new techniques that are in existence since Philadelphia, have any blades been pulled from service because a crack has been detected?
Yes, we have.
How many of those?
There's been a total of 8 crack findings since the Pensacola event.
So it's great that the inspection technique is pulling those parts from service, but that's a lot of blades that are cracking. Is this a surprise to CFM to see blades being pulled from service long before the expected fatigue life?
Well, yes, unexpected up until a couple of years ago, until we understood the problem. What we're seeing now, based on our new knowledge, material testing evaluation, the data we're getting from the field, we have a good understanding of why we're seeing it, and the number that we're seeing is consistent with our analytical model.
So there's been some talk about the lubrication of those blades, and that may be critical to helping to keep those stresses from accumulating. Mr. Wibben, can you describe what it is that Southwest does when they're re-lubing a blade?
Sure. So in order to do the lubrication task, the fan blades are removed from the engine and the dovetails are cleaned, and there is a lubricant that we brush on to the blade to restore the lubrication. That lubricant is initially applied at overhaul, and then now it's every 1,600 cycles after that.
And what is that brushed on lubricant?
Give me one moment.
Okay. And I'm going to ask Mr. Habedank, is that CFM's instruction to apply this particular brushed on lubricant?
Yes. Southwest is compliant with the CFM recommendation. There are multiple options in the manual to allow. One of them is a spray-on lubricant. Others are brush-on, and that's typical for fan blades. And again, Southwest is compliant with their actions.
Giving Mr. Wibben a chance to catch up with his research.
Yes, it is a moly coat paste, a thin coating of a lubricant that's called moly coat.
Gotcha. And in applying that lubricant, is there a measured thickness that has to be achieved? How do you know if the lubrication has been properly applied?
The aircraft maintenance manual, which we write into a task card, gives the mechanics instructions on how to apply the lubricant and know that they've done it correctly.
Mr. Habedank, when the blade first went into service, I think you described a re-lubrication interval that was somewhere between 1,500 and 3,000 cycles. Is that correct? At some point in the blade's early history, was there that range of availability for when the lubrication could be reapplied?
No, let me clarify. When we went into service in '97, we did not have a lubrication requirement for the dovetail. It only included the wear coating on the blade. After the early engines were not coming into the shop, but as we got looked at them as the blades were being inspected, we noted that the coating distress was more than we had anticipated. So that's when we introduced the first requirement for re-lubrication, which was every 3,000 cycles. That's put in the MPD, which is a mandated document owned by Boeing.
Now that cycle is down to 1,600 cycles.
1,600 cycles. We made that change just recently.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeLisi and Mr. Budinsky, for the questions. I would like to give the technical panel a little more time since we have some time remaining to continue or ask new questions as needed. Mr. English.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Scarfo has some follow-up questions for the panel.
My first question is for Mr. Habedank. Mr. English had asked previously to compare and contrast the fragmentation from the certification in the Pensacola and Philly events. Can you clarify where the fragments went and insert and compare those with those of the two events?
Yes, the fragment from the certification engine 2 build 2, went forward just as it did in all other 9 tests. Those 9 tests I referenced are the 2 certification tests and then the total of 8 rig tests. That tip panel is always the highest energy piece and always goes forward. The breakup is as I described earlier, with the tip fragment being pretty consistent, then a series of smaller, lower energy fragments in the midspan, followed by the root panel. For the Philadelphia blade, excuse me, let me ask a clarifying question, Mr. Scarfo. Did you ask me Philly or Pensacola or both?
Both.
Okay. So for the Pensacola event, we did not, we were not able to obtain the hardware because the event happened over water. But based on the evidence, the tip did go forward in that event. And then in the Philadelphia event, this chart I showed earlier highlighted that based on preliminary evidence and our assumptions given the data we have, it appears that the blade breakup on the Philadelphia blade is consistent with that of the certification test. What all that fragmentation means to the follow-on events is still being determined by the cross-party team led by NTSB.
So from what I've gathered, the certification test and the Philadelphia test look very similar, but there's a uniqueness to Pensacola that wasn't seen in Philly and wasn't seen in the certification test. Can you please explain that difference?
Yes, in all of our other testing, including the Philadelphia test, the root panel gets pulled aft and it lodges in what's called outlet guide vanes right behind the fan. So that's where we typically would find the root panel. In the Pensacola event, it appears that root panel did go forward and was not recovered.
And I'm sure Brian will probably ask questions in the afternoon section, but during the design of the inlet, that's something that's not accounted for because that's not something that's ever happened before. Correct.
The only event we have with the root panel, any evidence of the root panel going forward, was the Pensacola event. Excuse me.
Great. And if I've got time, I've got one additional question. This is for Mr. Seiberg. This is in relationship to rig test 4. I think we kind of glossed over it a little bit, that the importance of rig test 4 from the inlet's perspective. That was the first, and if I recall, that's the only time that a production representative inlet was installed on a rig prior to the certification test. Based on the damage that you saw, what were the corrective actions or redesigns that Boeing undertook to address the damage that was observed in rig test 4?
Following rig test 4, we worked directly with CFM to fully understand the fan blade fragment definition that went through the inner and outer barrel of the inlet. Upon definition from CFM of the exact parameters of energies and trajectories, Boeing then put a conservative estimate on that to develop a requirement, which was then deployed to UTAS, who was responsible for the design and development of the inlet, and with instructions in those requirements to develop a containment doubler to be able to contain the fragment as defined from rig test 4 with a conservative level estimate above that.
So just for clarification, rig test 4 had a representative inlet without a doubler or containment shield. And for the certification test, that's when you had a representative production inlet with a containment shield.
That is correct. And then through the post-test investigation of the data from the certification test, we were able to follow the fragmentation going into the inlet and get observations that the containment doubler was not penetrated during the certification test.
Excellent. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Scarfo. I'd like to follow up just along that same line of questioning a little bit and speak about some of the specifics of Philadelphia. Ms. Kemner, if you pull up, I think, visually to help the audience, the opening presentation, slide 5. We have you mentioned, Mr. Habedank, during the rig testing, there was one of the tests in which the axial retention failed, where the 5 blades came out. Just want to make sure that we clarify for the record, and if you can describe where on the slides this is. During the actual event in Philadelphia, that axial retention was not an issue. Is that correct?
That's a true statement. Thank you for the clarification.
And can you just describe for the audience where that failure, that problem was in the tests using these exemplars here that are not failed?
Yeah, actually.
Is it visible enough in there?
Yeah, I mean, towards the back of the blade, hold on, I think our 3D view of the assembly might be best to answer that, Mr. English. So, Ms. Kemner, could you please go to exhibit number 5? That might be the cleaner way to demonstrate or respond to Mr. English's question. Yeah, so you can kind of see on the fan blade at the base of it, on the back side of it, right where the dotted arrows are showing how it slides in, there's a little hook there. And then there's features on the disc and mating part as that hook goes back and the spacer pushes outboard, it gets locked in place. That's the feature we're talking about. Okay. And that feature's in there so that with normal operation, you got a heavy aero load with all that air pumping. Without some kind of axial feature, it would just shove the blades forward.
Okay. Great. Thank you, sir. If we can go back to the other photos, and let's just talk through Philadelphia a bit. So we have, we know for Philadelphia, just the one blade failed at the root. The axial retention was not an issue. We have a photo here that was mocked up. We used, these are just 3D print. The white things are 3D printed representations of those fragments that you showed before. Can you just describe for the record what we're seeing here with those fragments, what's trying to be displayed there? This was just done in the hangar. And where the parts are in relation to the A-flange and the containment doubler with these mock-ups, so we can just describe the trajectory that we see from the Philadelphia event.
Are you directing that to me?
Yes, to Mr. Habedank.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're looking for. Can you?
Yeah, just describe what we're seeing here with these fragments. So these are similar. This is what we think we see in the Philadelphia event, and you mentioned earlier that you think that's similar to what you saw in certification, correct?
Yes, thank you. With this in-process work that's being done, what happens, let's focus on the tip panel because that's very consistent. It's the highest energy piece. It doesn't just come straight out forward because it's got rotational energy. It's sliding almost like a marble around the inside of the nacelle itself. As it's doing that, it's also coming forward. So there's a helix angle that's associated with the trajectory, which is where a lot of the focus of the investigation is. These are the witness marks on the case that define what that spiral or helix angle is for each of the particles.
Okay, very good. So you saw a similar or a type of helix angle during the certification tests, correct?
Yes.
Is that part of the information that is passed from the engine manufacturer to the airframer?
Yes, there's a formal documentation with the airframer, and there's also a agency-approved document that documents for that highest energy component piece, the tip. We define the mass, velocity, and this spiral angle, which gives them the full level of energy.
Was that revisited at all after the test, which resulted in the addition of the containment doubler?
I don't know specifically if that was discussed, Mr. English. There were a lot of follow-on tests, and there was a lot of follow-on meetings following the certification test. I'm assuming as part of all that, we know we discussed all of the rig testing results, et cetera, along with the cert. I'm assuming that was brought up in there, but I can't say that for sure.
Okay, thank you. Just from the FAA perspective, Mr. Spinney, can you describe, are there particular criteria that the FAA sets, either in regulation or advisory material, for what type of information is transmitted from this type of test?
Yes, the design criteria in 3319 requires that the energy and the trajectory of those parts that are experienced during a blade-off test, anything that goes outside of the engine cases, that trajectory needs to be defined. Typically, they're defined in what's known as the installation manual, which is also required by Regulation 33.5. And just to go back a little bit, the trajectories that are in the installation manual are based on the final certification test in the prior certification test. So they all came after the rig test that you were talking about.
After that Cert 2/2, correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay, thank you. That's the end of my questions. Matt, Dr. Fox has some questions.
Thank you. I guess, Mr. Habedank, you had mentioned earlier during prior line of questioning, you mentioned about not taking credit for the shot peen surface condition, and also reference standard material properties. Could you describe a little bit how you determine the standard material properties with regard to fatigue life?
Yes, for the original design of the for the original life of the initial design, we used standard titanium material properties for the blade and made assessments with that. Part of our root cause investigation, we wanted to get a better material curve, so we actually took multiple blades and took specimens out of specifically forged blades forgings for 7B blades, and re-looked at the material properties to get a better definition. Those results were then used in our life analysis and to correlate those lives to what the observations are in the fleet, and that's where we have a good solid correlation.
And could you also describe, was there any component level testing done to determine fatigue life, or was it all based on the material properties and analysis?
Material properties and analysis. So we have a 3D model of the bladed disc, the full assembly. We'll run that in several conditions, look for the peak stress, the min stress, and go into the LCF curve with that. But it's straightforward in that the main load is the centrifugal load of the blade onto the disc dovetail. That reaction, along with the friction, is what gives you your stress in the area of interest. As I stated before, there's a lot of different ways to look at that friction factor because of the coating condition. So it's not one number for the life of the blade, which makes that life analysis more complex. And that's why we correlate it back to fleet observations and tie it together.
Very good, thank you. And then I just had maybe a couple of questions to follow on regarding the additional findings in the field, crack findings in the field following Pensacola. I guess I just want to clarify that, without naming any specific operators, could you describe overall, where, what operators you have seen, or, just kind of in a general sense, in that it's not just Southwest Airlines operator?
Yes, I want to get to my table of data so that I don't speak out of turn here. I want to make sure I give you the facts here. There we go. Now So in the Philadelphia event, there was one failed blade. In the Pensacola blade set, there was one failed blade 6 others with cracks. So we count that as 8 cracks seen on the 2 event engines. Outside of those 2 event engines, there are a total of 8 findings to date, and those are spread across different operators. 4 of them are at Southwest, 4 are not at Southwest. And the explanation for that is pretty simple. Southwest it was the EIS customer. They took delivery of many of the early engines, and we would expect, based on their quantity of engines, they're about 10% of our fleet, 1,500 engines out of 15,000. It's not a big surprise that they would have a bigger content than some others.
And as far as inspections, are they consistent across the fleet as what you're seeing, both domestic, international operators?
There's no difference in that. Everybody is using the same equipment, so there's no difference. They've all been trained. Part of our incorporation of these 2 new inspections, the eddy current and the ultrasonic, primarily the ultrasonic, we had to train 250 operators around the globe to be able to use this inspection, and as well as some other MRO shops that were third-party sources to assist. So there was a huge effort in late 2016, early 2017 to get ready for those service bulletins, and a big part of it was training so that everybody's using the same equipment, they understand how to read the equipment, and that they're not doing something unique.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Murphy? All right, Madam Chairman, the tech panel rests.
Thank you very much, Mr. English, and thank you for being so forthcoming. All the witnesses, we appreciate your taking time to answer these technical questions so carefully and referring to the documents. I think we are going to finish this session early, which will allow you more time for lunch and to get back through security this afternoon. But we will start at the same time we were planning to start, because there are people who have planned their day around this who are watching remotely. So I'm going to adjourn for lunch now, which is 11:26, and we will re-adjourn at 12:45 p.m. in this room. Thank you. I guess it was reconvene, not re-adjourn, but whatever.
The National Transportation Safety Board hearing will resume later on today at 12:45. No word of whether or not we will be streaming that, but you can always check out their website. Well, this morning, the Chester Community Charter School recognized 9 students for their achievements over the past few months with a $1,000 shopping spree at the Eddystone Walmart. The event ran from 7 a.m. to 7:45 a.m., and Fox 29's Thomas Drayton was there to check it out.
33. Well, in Chester, 9 students are being recognized for their outstanding work at Chester Community Charter School.
And what's their reward? Well, it's a $1,000 shopping spree at Walmart. $1,000.
All right, Thomas, let's do it.
Can you imagine 12 years old, you get $1,000 and you get to roam free in Walmart? What would you buy? So all hour we've been looking for Tyrone Davis, and I think we finally pinpointed him down. I want to bring in the CEO of Chester Community Charter School. David Clark, good morning to you. You're going to help me pinpoint Tyrone, right?
Find Tyrone Davis.
This is amazing. So we have 9 students running around the store, each receiving $1,000.
Right, to do some shopping at 7 o'clock in the morning at Walmart.
And this is for their academic achievement.
Absolutely, it's for their academic achievement. Most importantly, it's because of their progress. They've made the most progress in their particular schools than any other student. And each school has about 500 students in it. That means they've made the most progress of all the students in their buildings, which is fantastic.
And this is the second year you guys are doing this?
Second year we've done it, thanks to Vaughn and Danielle Reagan and Walmart, of course, and the staff of Chester Community Charter School.
So how are these students picked?
Well, they're picked because of their performance, because of their progress, because of their significant progress. They started here, and they grew up to here. And, you know, we want to reward them for that and let them know that we're paying attention to it and that it's important.
Okay, I'm looking around. Tyrone Davis?
Tyrone?
Is that you?
Oh,
is that you? $1,000. Congratulations.
My man. All right, how you feeling? You know anything about this?
You feeling good?
You feeling all right?
He's feeling great.
Feeling
I'm
good.
excited.
So you got $1,000. Tell me about the moment you found out you were getting $1,000 because of your academic achievement. Congratulations.
Excited.
Excited, going around the store, getting the basketball. I want to see what you bought so far. Mama, you must be very proud here.
I am very proud. It is a pleasure to know that my son has achieved the biggest achievement of the year.
And this is through hard work. This is through focusing on your schoolwork, right? What would you tell your friends? Because now you got $1,000. Yeah, shy, but you're a thousandaire. So where's your card? Because I want to see exactly what.
Over here near the register.
All right, let's go over to electronics. I mean, this is really about community involvement, getting everyone engaged and getting over the obstacles.
Absolutely. We have a lot of obstacles, and everybody knows that. They read the paper, look at the news, you know what's going on in the community, and our children they're still successful, despite some of the odds and obstacles they face.
And we're at Walmart. We're hoping for a greater partnership here with Walmart.
Absolutely. I want to thank Walmart for doing this. Not every store lets you come into their store at 7 o'clock in the morning. However, we are shopping, and they welcomed us with open arms. So, we're looking forward to increasing our involvement with Walmart.
All right. I think you did very well, Tyrone. So you got a basketball net. You like basketball, I take it.
Yes.
You're going to play this in the wintertime. Your mom's going to be calling you in to warm up.
Yeah.
What else did you get?
Got a laptop and TVs.
So you knew exactly what you were getting here today. You came in focused. By the way, congratulations to all the parents who are shopping. You should be very proud of the little ones, and definitely an achievement for next year as they honor 9 more students. Keep up the amazing work.
Thank you.
Back to you guys.
I
12
love
years old, $1,000.
The little guy had a credit card in his hand.
Yes, the card. He looks so happy.
Right?
Big old smile.
Oh, my God. You got a basketball goal, a big screen TV.
And they deserve it. They put in the work.
I love it.
Absolutely adorable. Mike and Alex have been tasting cultural dishes from all over the world to spice up their Thanksgiving feast. This morning they met with Janet Davis, the owner and executive chef of Jade Jamaican Grill in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, for her twist on a Thanksgiving side dish.
Are traveled around the world. Here's the concept. We have Thanksgiving dinner coming up a week from tomorrow, right?
Yes.
So let's say you're from a different land, a different nationality. Maybe you have a side that a lot of us don't have, like if you are from Jamaica.
We just want to celebrate how different cultures do Thanksgiving. So joining us now, we have Janet Davis, who's the owner and executive chef at Jade Jamaican Grill. It's in Cherry Hill. She's a friend of the show. Good to see you again.
By the way, that is not a restaurant that you would walk in and sit down. This is a catering service.
Catering service.
Yes. So don't be driving around looking for her place.
But it's so good you might want to.
Right.
Just saying.
All right, so we had the meeting yesterday, and Alex goes, oh, make sure you have some cabbage.
It's my favorite.
As a side.
It's one of mine as well. So we have steamed cabbage, and it's cabbage, green cabbage, shaved carrots, bell pepper, green bell pepper, and onions. Savory mix, nothing hot or spicy, just a nice, flavorful, savory dish.
Get in there, Alex.
And I like how it's all, like, it feels so buttery and it just all kind of comes together in your mouth.
It's really good. Quite savory.
It is so interesting because I don't like the taste of cabbage until you boil it or steam it or something like that. But when it's, that's good stuff.
And this is steamed very well.
Yeah.
So it's a really good side.
What's that?
This is one of my absolute favorite and a classic Jamaican. This is callaloo, similar to a collard greens, but not as harsh. And it has codfish in there, sauteed cod, onions, peppers, tomato, fresh thyme, and a little bit of Scotch bonnet. So not a lot of heat, but some great flavor there.
Okay. The Scotch bonnet is a pepper, right?
It's a hot pepper.
Ooh.
Very hot pepper.
All right, Alex, you want to nail that?
No, that's you, because
Are you sure?
spicy. I get a little nervous.
Okay.
Just a little pinch, just a little
Tonight's
bit
gonna
in
test
there.
it out for me.
You got to have rice.
Rice and peas.
And we brought along two rice and peas, two rice dishes.
Okay.
This one is our classic rice and peas with kidney beans. We just say red peas or big red. It's kidney beans. And we have, what you have here is the gungo peas, which is your pigeon peas. So two different options for a starch side, both very savory. Coconut milk, a little salt, fresh thyme, a little allspice, and scallion.
Those greens are some of the best I've ever had in my life.
Very good, right? So these are two sides that you can add to your Thanksgiving table. And of course, what would any dinner, anything be without some sweet plantains? I have never met anyone who don't like sweet plantains.
I agree with you.
It's so good.
They deliver every time. And finally, our pop chow, what we call pop chow, which in American culture is bok choy.
Oh,
okay.
nice.
And this is just lightly seasoned, delicately seasoned and flavored and sauteed.
Let me try
Very
that
good.
now, 'cause I haven't
You should
had
try that.
Bok choy.
Very
in a long
soft and
time.
very savory.
That's really well done because bok choy is kind of hard when you buy it.
It's very deceiving. It's so sturdy, but it cooks quickly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very tender.
Oh my gosh.
This
So
is
will
great.
you have this on your Thanksgiving table?
I'll have some of it. I'll definitely have my gungo peas and my sweet plantains. I'm still up for debate as to which green side.
Okay.
I got an idea.
What?
Combining the two. Jerk turkey. Couldn't you jerk a turkey?
You could jerk a turkey, or maybe, you know, there's someone else already jerking the turkey. That's a jerk, and then you have the turkey.
Why are you looking at me?
She's like, just saying.
You might already have the jerk. You just need a turkey.
My goodness, I just need a turkey.
Yep, that's all we need.
Janet, will be the last time you're on the show, but thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. So good. I'm going to have
Thank you,
more of my
guys.
cabbage.
Thank
That's
you.
great. Okay, let's move on.
All right.
And for our last segment from Good Day This Morning, if you don't like pickles, you may not want to watch, but it's National Pickle Day, so of course Good Day checked out some dishes and drinks, apparently.
Day. So we brought Chris Hagan in. You talk about a guy that knows his way around a pickle. It's this dude, Chris Hagan, from Devil's Den.
Thanks, Mike.
South Philly, strong for 10 years, down 11th and Ellsworth. Good to have you here. Now, we like you. We're going to move closer to you now.
Thanks.
All right. I love these. Been eating them for years. Pickled chips, how do you do them?
Yeah, so we beer batter them and then deep fry them.
Ooh. What kind of pickle?
So kosher dill pickle.
A big kosher dill.
Big dill kosher dill. Yep.
Some places do a little thinner. I like the way you do it thick.
Thick. You get nice beefiness in there.
What do you dip it in?
That's our house-made ranch sauce.
Ah, I love it.
House made, nice.
Here's something I've never seen before.
Oh, that looks amazing.
Chicken wings. How is it pickled?
So there are pickleback wings. We brine them in pickle juice, and then we toss them in our house-made whiskey sauce.
How long would you brine them?
Usually about 2 days. You don't want to brine too much, then they get
Wow.
tough.
This is off the hook.
Right?
I was not on the. I was not convinced that it's so good. I would order this.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
God.
this is like sweet.
Yeah, that's the whiskey sauce.
Excuse me?
Very
What's
good.
Whiskey sauce.
Oh, what's going on over there?
That's why they're a pickleback wing.
Now,
Go
have
ahead.
you ever met a man who bottles his own pickle juice? Of course you haven't. Well, now you know Chris. Where do you do this? At
So
your place?
we bottle this at the den and we do sell it. Pickle juice is great for morning hangovers, mixing cocktails at home.
Being a football player, right?
Yep, exactly.
Andy
There's
Reid.
actually more electrolytes than any sports drink.
Well, then we need this before the show. Come on, let's pour it up, Mike.
It's not mixed with anything, right?
Nope,
This is
that's just
pure-
straight
Just
pickle
straight,
juice.
nothing but pickle. Okay, Karen, here's yours.
How do you make a pickle juice? Thank you,
The-
Alex.
There you go.
It's a long
All right.
process. A lot of herbs, vinegar, and you pickle
Cheers.
cucumbers.
Cheers.
Did all
To the
pickles
9 a.m. hour.
start as a cucumber?
Yes. But not all pickles are cucumbers.
And I
Explain
love
that.
pickle juice.
You can pickle pretty much anything.
Woo!
They plan to pickle me as a news anchor here in about 6 months.
Wow.
You did that as a whole shot. You just downed it.
Well, it's in a shot glass. Was I not supposed to do it all at once?
When in Rome.
Wow.
That's powerful.
I'm telling on myself. Anyway,
Well, this looks like 2 pickles.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, let's move on.
Yeah.
we're just showing you what a pickle looks like.
Little
I
Mike.
had no idea. They're green and long.
Love it.
What is that? What is that?
So we're gonna make one of our cocktails on the menu. It is our pickle whiskey Collins. We make a house-made pickle whiskey.
You make that?
We do. We infuse pickles in it for about a week and a half. Wow. And then we put it in our bottles and we serve it. We call it skip the middleman. So instead of doing 2 shots of pickleback, you're just doing the 1 shot. So you're skipping the middleman.
Okay, is this?
And
some
we
kind
turn
of-
it into a Collins. That's club soda.
What's in here?
Club soda.
Okay, this is.
So what we do is we take a shot of our pickle whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
We take a shot of our lime juice. And then we top it off with club soda.
All the way to the top.
All the way to the top.
Just getting everywhere, Mike.
So you get a little tanginess from the citrus in there. You get the dill from the pickle, and then the club soda
Would
balances
you
it out.
use a straw on that? Or would you just drink?
I
it?
don't use straws.
Like
when-
cocktail?
Yeah, my cocktails.
Karen, are you willing?
Sure. Sure. Leave it all.
Come on over.
You try a little bit? Should I pour a little sip of it? Want to try a little bit, Alex?
I'll try a little bit.
Okay. I'll
look
take
at
one
you
out of
two.
here. There we go.
Oh, she gives me the big. She asked me if I wanted a sip. My gosh.
I don't know about
It needs
that.
to be stirred, I think, a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's refreshing, but
But it
it's
is refreshing. Yes, it is.
Stir it up a little bit. Now, pickled beer.
Yes.
I've not heard of.
You guys
So-
are going pickle crazy.
Every year we get with Evolution Brewing, and we make a what the dill is what we call it. It's a pickleback inspired beer. It's a dill wheat beer that we age in Dad's Hat rye barrels. We ferment it and age it in the barrels for about 4 weeks.
Where are you doing this?
Evolution's in Maryland, Salisbury, Maryland.
Wow.
So we go to their brewery and we do it out there. We actually do it on a small homebrew system in the middle of their brewery.
Looks like a Bloody Mary.
With
It
pickles?
is. It's called our Bloody Pickle. So it's just your house vodka, pickle juice, and my house Bloody Mary mix.
Oh, please try that,
Yeah.
Alex.
Karen, I'm
Karen.
not
That's
usually
me.
a Bloody
I'll
Mary
try that
person.
one. I am a
I
Bloody
wouldn't
Mary
be a good
person in the
gauge.
I
breakfast.
love Bloody Marys. Hair of the dog.
Oh, it's really good. It's really. I would come and order that.
Thank you.
Wow.
Oh, this is so good.
Now,
And then
this
what's
looks
this
like
one?
A martini.
So that's our pickletini.
Pickle tea. Now, you normally have all this stuff at your place?
So
Or is this just for today?
The pickle Collins and the pickle beer, or the pickle Collins on our menu all the time. The pickle beer we keep in stock, the bottles every once in a while, and this stuff is special for National Pickle Day.
Should I put some hair on your chest there?
And who doesn't like that?
Definitely did. Wow.
Can you get juice out of a gherkin?
If you squeeze hard enough.
Thank you. Vroompa. Good to see you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great.
I'm going back to the chicken wings.
It's definitely not for everybody, but I love pickles, so I will definitely be checking out Devil's Den on South 11th Street right here in Philadelphia. And that concludes today's Fox 29 News Now. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter for all the latest and breaking news, and catch our broadcasts at 5, 6, 10, and 11 tonight.